Our planet is 4.5 billion years old, and in that time, it has had the opportunity to create things that defy every rule we thought we understood about how the natural world works. We have mapped the ocean floors. We have photographed the surface of Mars. We have peered into the hearts of distant galaxies through the lenses of orbiting telescopes. And yet, here, on the only world we have ever called home, there are places that still leave scientists speechless. Rivers that boil without a heat source. Craters filled with eternal fire. Lakes so chemically violent that animals entering them are slowly turned to stone. Rocks that move across desert floors without any visible force to push them. And volcanoes that burn not red, but blue. These are not legends. They are not myths passed down through generations of storytellers sitting around ancient fires. They are real. And once you understand what created them, our planet will never look the same again. Deep in the heart of the Peruvian Amazon, where the rainforest grows so thick that sunlight barely reaches the forest floor, there is a river unlike any other on Earth. The Shanai Timpishka, in the language of the people who have lived beside it for generations. The name means boiled with the heat of the sun. But the sun is not responsible for what happens here. Steam rises constantly from the river's surface, curling upward into the humid jungle air, like smoke from some great underground furnace. The temperature of the water reaches nearly 100 degrees Celsius across long stretches of its length. Animals that stumble from the riverbank into the current are dead within seconds. Cooked alive by water that should, by every law of geology, not exist at this temperature. For centuries, the local Ashaninka people regarded this river as sacred, a place where the spirit world pressed closest to the surface of the living earth. Scientists who first heard of it dismissed it as legend. The problem is simple and profound. Water this hot requires a heat source, and heat sources in geology mean one thing: volcanic activity. But the nearest active volcano to the Shanai Timpishka is more than 700 kilometers away, far too distant to account for what is happening here. Geologist Andres Russo spent years studying the river before arriving at an explanation. Deep fault lines in the Earth's crust allow ancient geothermal heat stored in the rock itself since the planet's formation, to rise and warm groundwater before it reaches the surface. The result is a boiling river in the middle of a rainforest. A geological impossibility that exists regardless of whether we can fully explain it. The river is 4 to 6 meters wide in places. The steam above it is constant, and the jungle presses in from both sides, indifferent and eternal, as though a boiling river in its midst is simply one more feature of a world that has always been stranger than we imagined. In the middle of the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, where the landscape stretches flat and featureless in every direction for hundreds of kilometers, there is a hole in the ground that has been on fire for more than 50 years. It is called the Door to Hell. The crater is approximately 69 meters wide and 30 meters deep. Its edges glow orange in the darkness. The heat radiating from its interior is felt from dozens of meters away. And at its bottom, hundreds of natural gas jets burn with a constant, roaring intensity that has not diminished since the fire was first lit in 1971. The story of how the Door to Hell came to exist is a reminder that the Earth's interior does not always accommodate human plans. A Soviet geological drilling team identified what appeared to be a significant oil field beneath the desert floor and began drilling operations. The ground beneath their equipment collapsed without warning, dropping their entire drilling rig into a vast underground cavern filled with natural gas. The cavity was far larger than any surface survey had suggested. Faced with the risk of toxic methane gas spreading across the region, the engineers made a decision. They would ignite the gas. They calculated the underground reservoir would burn itself out within days, perhaps weeks. More than 50 years later, the fire shows no signs of stopping. At night, the glow of the door to hell is visible from miles across the flat desert. Standing at its edge, the heat pressing against the face, the roaring of the flames rising from below. It is impossible not to feel that something fundamental about the solidity of the ground beneath human feet has been permanently revised. In northern Tanzania, near the border with Kenya, there is a lake that kills almost everything that enters it. Lake Natron. Its water is a deep, rust-red color, the result of microorganisms that thrive in its extreme alkalinity. The lake's pH can reach 10.5. Its sodium carbonate content is so concentrated that the water acts as a caustic preservative, fixing the tissues of animals that die in or near it into rigid, mineral-encrusted forms that persist for years after death. Photographer Nick Brandt documented animals found at the lake's edge. Birds and bats, their bodies perfectly preserved, transformed into stone-like statues by the lake's chemistry. The images are extraordinary and deeply unsettling. And yet, on this lethal lake, one of the greatest wildlife spectacles on Earth takes place each year. More than 2 million lesser flamingos descend on Lake Natron to breed. They build their nests on small islands of dried sodium deposits in the lake's center. Islands that no predator can cross because the caustic water would burn through the pads of any animal attempting to wade to them. The flamingos, through millions of years of evolution, have developed specialized skin on their legs and feet that resists the lake's chemistry. The very toxicity that makes the lake lethal to everything else is precisely what makes it safe for them. A place that should not support life has become the single most important breeding ground for an entire species. In California's Death Valley, already one of the most extreme desert environments on Earth, there is a phenomenon so strange that it puzzled scientists for nearly a century. The rocks move. On the flat, cracked surface of the racetrack playa, a dried lake bed in the heart of the valley, hundreds of rocks of varying sizes, some weighing several hundred kilograms, have clearly been moving across the ground. They leave long, unmistakable trails carved into the dry mud behind them. Trails stretching for tens of meters, sometimes turning corners, sometimes running parallel to each other. No one had ever witnessed the movement directly. No human or animal tracks accompanied the trails. Cameras left at the site over multiple seasons captured nothing. The solution, when it finally came, was as elegant as it was unexpected. During rare winter nights, thin sheets of ice form across the playa's surface. As the morning sun begins to warm the air, these ice sheets, large, thin, extraordinarily fragile, begin to melt and fracture. The wind, moving across the playa with nothing to obstruct it, pushes these broken sheets of ice against the rocks. And the rocks, lifted fractionally by the thin film of meltwater beneath them, begin to slide. The movement is almost imperceptibly slow, a few meters in the course of several hours, inaudible, invisible to the naked eye in real time. But across years and decades, the result is a landscape of trails and mystery. A place that looks, to every instinct, like something impossible is happening. On the island of Java in Indonesia, there is a volcano that erupts in blue, Mount Ijen. By day, it is a dramatic but recognizable volcanic crater. Steep slopes of dark rock, a turquoise sulfuric acid lake at its base, plumes of white steam rising from volcanic vents. Miners work its slopes in brutal conditions, carrying baskets of solid sulfur weighing up to 90 kilograms down the mountain, often without adequate protection against the toxic gases that fill the crater air. But at night, Mount Aijin becomes something that looks borrowed from another world. Sulfuric gases, forced through cracks in the volcano's surface at temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Celsius, ignite upon contact with the air. The resulting flames are not the red or orange of conventional fire. They burn electric blue, vivid, brilliant, alien, sometimes reaching 5 meters into the dark air above the crater floor. Lava that flows from the same vents carries the burning gas with it, creating rivers of blue fire running down the volcanic rock. The effect is breathtaking and deeply strange. Visitors who have stood at the crater's edge in darkness and watched the blue fire move across the rock describe it as one of the most otherworldly experiences available on this planet without leaving it. Our world is stranger than we allow ourselves to believe. Beneath the ordinary surface of continents and ocean floors, forces of almost incomprehensible scale and patience are at work. Heat rising from a planetary core, still cooling from the violence of formation. Chemistry operating across timescales that make human history look like a single breath. Life, relentless and inventive, finding purchase in conditions that every rational calculation says should be lethal. These places exist not in spite of the laws of nature. They exist because of them. Because the laws of nature are older and more creative and more indifferent to human expectation than we have yet learned to fully appreciate. The earth does not require our understanding to produce its wonders. It did not wait for our science before it boiled its rivers, lit its volcanoes blue, and turned its lakes into stone. It has been doing these things across vast stretches of time, during which no human eye existed to witness them. We are the newcomers here, the recent arrivals, the species that has been present for the last fraction of a single second in the long day of this planet's life. And we are still only beginning to understand what kind of world we actually live on.